My name is Jeff Gilbert. I'm with Verizon Digital Media Services. So you've probably all heard of Verizon. I think I'm confident in that. But you may not have heard of Digital Media Services. So this is my 2-second pitch for what we're up to. If you've been following the space over the last year or so, you'll realize that Verizon has made a significant financial investment in streaming content over the web, which is why we're here and why you're all here. They acquired the Edgecast CDN about a year ago, along with a company called Uplink, which is a SaaS application for that sort of front ends and allows you to have a single point that you can ingest and process and stream your content on the web. So it's a serious investment because Verizon believes this is something serious, and that's why I'm here and that's why we're sponsoring this panel. We have an excellent panel tonight. I know everybody says that, and it's not really night, it's day, but we have an excellent panel here. We've got folks from Yahoo, we've got folks from Twitch. So Yahoo's, I would say, general entertainment. Twitch, we got gaming. We've got sports in Pac-12, and we've got live special events in Bulldog Digital Media. So if you think about it, people that are making money on the web are these guys, and they're here to show us what you got to think about when there's a serious major event going on. As you know, the web has moved beyond streaming skateboarding videos, although I do like some of those when they end up in the wall. But we've moved beyond that, and now there's some serious sponsorship going on of major events. And when you do that, it's taken it to a different level. Now there's no room for failure anymore, and these guys are the ones that have figured out what it is you need to think about when you're going up on the web with a major sponsored event or a major subscription event, etc. So thank you all for coming. A couple of housekeeping things. First of all, this is being recorded, so what you say here doesn't stay here. So just know that. Secondly, cell phones, if you could silence them, that would be appropriate. Third, there's some drinking afterwards, so hang out till 5, and then you'll all get a cocktail, so we appreciate that. So let me start by introducing Chris Mangum from Yahoo. Go ahead and tell everybody what you guys are up to in this space and how you fit into that, please.
So we stream, right now our big initiative is, we call it Yahoo 365 internally. It's a concert every night, every night for the rest of the year. That's our big thing that's going on right now. But in addition to that, we've got Kitty Cork live shows that we do. We've got a fantasy football show that runs every Sunday through the NFL season. We've got a Hot Stock Minute show that runs every morning for finance. We've got multiple live events going on multiple properties every day.
And how do you fit into that, personally?
I'm responsible for signal acquisition, encoding, and delivery.
Right. Okay, let's move over to Ryan Courier from Pac-12. Same question to you.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. So Ryan Courier, I'm with Pac-12 Networks. I'm head of digital products. And I'm responsible for all of the defining the product and user experiences that our consumers interact with to watch Pac-12 content, Pac-12 video. From a live perspective, this year we're going to stream almost over 1,500 total events. We have 850 events that are on our broadcast TV stations, about 400 or 500 other sporting events that our schools will live stream direct on the internet. And then hundreds of other sort of smaller form events like press conferences and interviews and sort of behind the scenes stuff, in addition to creating a bunch of non-live content. So I would say, what I look forward to talking about on this panel is sort of the breadth of content and the magnitude, similar to what Chris referred to. It sort of never ends for us, tons of content.
Thank you. Justin Ignacio.
Hey guys. Yep. So I work at Twitch. We're the world's largest live video platform for gamers. So every month, more than 16 million people come to our website to watch people play video games. And I'm one of the guys that makes sure the major events go well. The events with over 700,000 people watching at once concurrently on our platform, that's also the CDN. So I travel around like the world, I guess, and make sure these large video game tournaments go well, or video game conventions or award shows or whatever have you.
Thank you. John?
Hello, I'm John Petrocelli at Bulldog Digital Media. Bulldog is a digital execution agency for live events where we help facilitate, optimize, and monetize premium live content experiences, which is a longer way of saying we try to bring the Red Bull Stratus effect to these premium entertainment engagements. We have massive collaboration across all devices, and we do that through best practices that my team and I have cultivated over the last 8 years in this market. I ran a live streaming technology company that I sold into AEG, who's the world's largest presenter of live music and live sports, and then built an externally facing business that powered most of the premium experiences in the world, which range from the Grammys, the Masters, the Oscars, the TED Conference, E3, all of MTV's live events that fed into the broadcast. And then prior to being acquired, I kind of socialized this notion to YouTube of having the experience where you drive a big audience and then expose that audience to the assets across the platform. So that led to a services agreement where we would power everything on the Google side, like the investors call or the developers forum, and on the YouTube side, anything and everything from Coachella to Lollapalooza to Bonnaroo to Austin City Limits to product launches for big brands or movie premieres for studios. And as that business started to mature, I noticed massive adoption on mobile handsets and also very extended user engagement times if these events were executed properly. So about 2 years ago, a group of us spun out to form Bulldog to work with all the stakeholders in that ecosystem. Brands, agencies, content owners, and we have a big emphasis on music festivals given their popularity and their breadth and their reach of content. So our role is to help all those stakeholders deliver and execute at the highest possible level.
Excellent. So I've talked with all of you guys a little bit before and did some prep here and asked you for some feedback as to what are some of the major things that people think about when they're talking about live events that can't fail. And one of the topics that I think everybody mentioned was scale. And so I think everyone has a different understanding of what you mean by scale. But Ryan, maybe you can kind of start us off as to what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about, all right, how do I scale up to whatever users I need to have? And is it about CDN? Is it about load balancing? What should I be thinking about?
Yeah, so in our case, which may be actually slightly different than these guys who are often focused on one super high profile event to a very large number of users, in a lot of cases what we have going on is a lot of events concurrently. So I was just telling these guys a story that on Friday, this most recent Friday night, we had 19 concurrent live events that we were producing and streaming out on our platform over the course of about a 4 to 5 hour period. Bunch of men's basketball games as the season's starting for them, some soccer games, etc. So for us, it's a lot about how do we scale the enablement, acquisition, and monitoring of so many events all happening at the same time. Some of which have fairly large audiences and some of which have small audiences, but even to those audiences, part of our mission is to delight them and ensure that they have a great viewing experience and that they come back for more and come to trust our platform as a reliable way to watch sports.
So do they effectively add amongst each other? You have 20 events. Do you need 20 times the bandwidth and 20 times the CDN?
Not necessarily. I mean, so we've been around for about 2 years, so we've developed a pretty good model as far as understanding which events are going to drive major traffic or not. And we've seen significant rises from an overall perspective, but we can still tell the difference between if we're going to have USC football that we're streaming versus an Arizona State women's soccer game. The audience size is pretty different and often pretty predictable. So from an architectural perspective, honestly, I think we've put in place a pretty good system that scales up or down pretty well depending on those different audience sizes.
All right, thanks. So Chris, as Ryan had mentioned, you guys have a different take on scale. Maybe you can share with us some of the things that you guys think about when you're considering how do I scale this solution?
Right. So generally speaking, Ryan was fairly accurate. We generally have a one-off event every night or throughout the day. We usually don't have multiple shows going at the same time, or if we do, it's maybe 2 or 3. But I've been at Yahoo for 15 years, streaming live video, and we've also got a pretty accurate algorithm for predicting how much bandwidth we're going to need or how much we're going to utilize. The big wrinkle that came in for us this year is our concert series that we're streaming. As far as bandwidth goes, we're delivering to OTT devices now, Apple TV, Roku, and Xbox, and to deliver a good-looking quality picture on those devices, you have to bump up the bit rate, so that in turn increases your bandwidth that you need. We're streaming to just under 7 megs so that it looks pristine on your 50 or 60-inch TV. So we definitely have to take that into consideration.
So is it IP transit bandwidth that you need? Is it CDN? Is it like, what are the elements that go into that scale decision?
It's CDN. We partner with Limelight right now, and they've been doing a great job for us delivering globally on every live event that we do, not just our concert series.
Okay, so that's a major thing.
Yeah.
So let's move a little bit to user experience. That was something else that had come up. And I think that, John, you guys are really kind of leading the pack when it comes to user experience. And I think you had mentioned that the technology, the back-end technology, is to some extent table stakes for you. And that these are things that we know have to work and they're going to work. But that's not really what it's about for you when it comes to delivering a reliable solution that's sponsored. What are you guys thinking about when you've got a sponsor coming in and saying, hey, we want to do this event? How do you make that work so that they're happy?
Sure. The sponsor community, what we're looking at from a live streaming perspective is solving the challenges of traditional television, where particularly millennials they're not consuming media in traditional ways, i.e. they're not watching Law & Order on Thursday night and sitting through the State Farm commercial. Where they are congregating is around a premium tentpole, say a music festival. And when we're engaged in that process, that's 4 stages being shot simultaneously, delivering 2 channels of live video. Red Bull is a great example of that this year. They presented both Lollapalooza and Austin City Limits in 3 channels of video. So the way to engage that user is, 1, give them that opportunity to change their viewing experience. Very different from traditional TV where it's forced to you. Secondarily, having done hundreds of these experiences, it's very clear that the consumer, not only do they want to view the experience, they want to talk about it. They want to tweet, post, comment, etc. And the ability to kind of turn on a curated, moderated, or enabled social stream that's a companion to the video actually drives the audience. If it's related to the video, the commentary, versus spam or other things that would slow down the viewing process or inhibit it. Turning on those features in addition to things like a polling gadget or a trivia gadget or even a photo wall, everybody either at the experience or viewing at home has a camera built into their mobile device. It's very easy for them to then build a collaborative experience. So the objective is, if I'm T-Mobile or State Farm or Pepsi or Coke and I'm backing these experiences, and if it is those 2 channels of video, it's 9 hours on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and a music festival today has the top artists in the world performing. That's really they're making their money in touring, and something like a Coachella has a very robust lineup. That yield is 54 hours of live video, plus a rebroadcast another 108. So the ability to turn on that user experience and have all of those features functioning in harmony, that's where the brand is getting the most return for their dollar, in that they can sustain and achieve a 30, 40, 50, 60-minute average view duration time, which is very consistent with gaming, right? That's the objective, is how do I tap into that audience and how do I engage them in the user experience, and a live engagement is clearly the key kind of driver to achieve that goal.
And is that something that the sponsors, like post-event, is that something you sit down and you review with the sponsor? They've set goals and said, we'd like to have this amount of engagement and this amount of driving people to other behaviors, et cetera. Do you,
right,
are you at that level talking with the sponsor?
The advantage of streaming, again, versus television is the data is a lot more granular. We can report back where people are, how long they watch, what they talked about in social stream, what device platform they're on. So that's very compelling data that, yes, in fact, if you'll both get that from the brand, but also their agency of record and their digital agency, they all want to know, what's happening and how and what their success factor was, or their key performance indicator.
And how's the return purchase from these guys? Are they coming back again and again?
The ability to put a brand in front of an experience for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, that doesn't really exist anywhere in my mind that I've seen other than live streaming. So that's becoming a very successful. And if you look at the sponsorship in general of live music is now about a $1.34 billion business that's had about a 50% growth rate. You look at what Live Nation talks about in their earnings call, It's sponsorship is a big part of their business. So you're going to see more of that, i.e. Their Yahoo deal. That's where you're going to find a successful spend of your advertising dollar, especially if one of your initiatives is to reach a millennial. And I think the largest population in the country or the world today are 23-year-olds, right? And they're not sitting in front of that television set on Thursday night at 10 o'clock. So this is becoming a very eye-opening, successful spend if executed properly for a brand with a very high return in terms of engagement plus the metrics that come with the experience.
Great. So Justin, can you weigh in here?
Yeah.
I know your experience is a little bit different.
It's a little bit different as a 23-year-old too, being able to see that perspective there. But you have to agree, when it comes to user experience, like a lot of that is driven by the social platforms out there, Twitter and such. But when it comes to Twitch specifically, we have when you watch a channel or a stream on Twitch, whether you're broadcasting as a gamer or a producer of a video game or an event, you have your chat room. It exists always there, whether it's in our apps or whether it's in the web platform. So when it comes to that, when there's large events, we have to make sure that those are well moderated. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people there broadcasting, like watching your broadcast, and they're going to be chatting. And of course, there's always that 1%, some really loud guy who's obnoxious that you have to be able to give your broadcasters the tools to remove them from that chat room experience, right? So for me, that's like where the scalability comes with our user experience. You need to be able to moderate that, build the tools there for your viewers, your partners, to make sure they're happy with the amount of moderation you give them for these major events, at least on Twitch.
So let's drill down a little bit more in that,
Sure.
if you can. So I learned something earlier when I was chatting with you, exactly what's going on Twitch. I'm not the biggest gamer, I have to admit it here. And so can you fill us in, like, how are these broadcasts getting out there, and what is that experience
Sure.
like for the user? Like, what are you building in so that the user's really
Yeah.
getting from
So
this
so Twitch as a platform allows anyone to broadcast to it. If you own a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, you could tell it via voice broadcast to Twitch, and you can you just log in with your whatever you signed in with on the website, and then you're immediately broadcasting it out as long as you have a stable internet connection. But that's like our majority of broadcasters. The top ones though that get the biggest viewership are the guys who are holding these major events. These events where people are competing for big cash prizes in video game tournaments, or you're releasing a game, or you're talking about releasing a game at the Electronic Entertainment Expo over in LA. Those are like the biggest viewership on our platform. And yeah, it scales. I'm sorry, I lost myself. What was the question exactly?
Well, I'm really just trying to drill down and find out what that user experience is.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, John was talking about how the user experience they're providing is for millennials who will want to lean in, and they want to look at all of this associated content. They want to communicate it with Twitter and such. And so, like, what is this user experience that's distinct from what John's talking about? Are
Yeah.
these people leaning back and just watching someone else play games? Are they interacting in any way? Like,
So-
what does it feel like to be a real Twitch participant?
So when you're watching someone on Twitch, it's kind of that old experience of someone playing on an arcade machine and being behind their shoulder, watching them play that game. You get that kind of enjoyment from it. But yeah, because of our user experience, you actually have interactivity with whoever you're broadcasting with. Let's say you're one of those people with a PlayStation broadcasting to Twitch. You can read there in like a little picture-in-picture window the chat room of people commenting on how you're playing or giving you tips on how to advance to the next level. That's the kind of communication that we provide as a user, like for your user experience when you're broadcasting to us. But when you scale that up to like tons and tons of people, you need to be able to find a way to keep that noise down. Or in some cases, you want to keep that noise up, which is usually the sporting events, which are esports events on Twitch, where people are competing for that money, where you want to see all that chat. You want to see when a commentator makes a funny remark, then you see a sea of LOL throughout the entire chat room. Like sometimes that's what you want. But
So that's great for the experience. Now let's take it one step further. And how does the money get involved, right? Where's the sponsorship? Why can't that fail? Because, okay, if I'm sitting and watching a guy and it fails, what do I care?
So that part of the user experience, the chat room, is integral to keeping that viewership, in my opinion at least. When I watch people on Twitch, if I don't have that chat room, I'm unable to really feel as connected to the sports experience when it comes to large events. So we need to make sure that occurs so we get that viewership, and that's what's important to the sponsors of these people who play on Twitch. Just to backtrack a little bit, there's people who make livings off of streaming video games on our platform. They actually are like they actually leave college. They're so good at the games that they have tens of thousands of people watching them all the time, and they can just quit their day job and just make enough money to just play games for, I don't know, forever, I guess. But from that, it's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, so the way these guys make their money is off these sponsorships. Let's say this guy is known for being the best at this computer game. A keyboard sponsor would love to give him a keyboard and would pay for him to use their keyboard brand. So when they go to events, when they travel to like Denmark or Korea, they will put their keyboard down, and you can see clearly from these productions that what keyboard brand they're using. And from that's how these people make a living, not only through Twitch with our ad platform, which I didn't explain that well. You can do 50-50 ad revenue split, stuff like that. But these guys actually make a living off of their sponsorship. They get paid by just using their gear while they're broadcasting these games.
Okay, so it's interesting, and I'm going to go to you in just a second here, Ryan.
I have a
just to kind of sum up so John's talking about an experience and making it so it can't fail, and tying the sponsors in is by creating a robust, lean-in experience for millennials that's branded with a typical advertising agency or digital agency that knows how to put brands in front of people. You're talking about a little bit more, I don't know the right word for that, but okay, here's this keyboard that's sort of secretly hanging out there, and people can kind of see the name of the keyboard, and they know. And so they're getting the fact that people are sort of, okay, I'm using your product. In real time, they're seeing that. Now, Ryan, what are you seeing with regards to that? I think it's a little bit of a different spin from what you were telling me. What about the user experience is it that you're putting together that means that this thing can't fail? Because there's something of value going on here that sponsors or advertisers are willing to pay for. And what is it that you're thinking about when it comes to user experience that just can't fail?
Well, I mean, the reality of sports is when important moments happen, you can't miss them. And, you know, the outcome of sporting events is ruined on Twitter, essentially. So they're inherently spoiled if you miss if you miss it in the moment. It's actually really interesting to hear what Justin's describing, because I think we have aspirations to create more of a lean forward experience, but the reality of what we see our users doing is they're watching sports. And in a lot of cases, the conversation around sports happens off platform. So it happens on Twitter, whereas I think Twitch, most of the conversation is happening within their platform as opposed to off platform. And I don't know if that's, we haven't built the right user experience yet, or it's about the demographics of the audience. I honestly don't know. And I think it's something we're trying to work toward, is how do we create, especially for millennials, younger generation, how do we create an engaging experience that will ensure that that set of fans continues to be really enamored with sports for many years to come.
So Chris, you're anxious to get in here, I can see that, right? What's your take on this? User experience.
So speaking from the concert perspective, I found it interesting that John mentioned 40-minute watch times. During concerts, during festivals and things, we see similar watch times on all of our concerts, especially music festivals, and
like the Live Nation stuff.
The Live Nation, specifically the Live Nation stuff, yeah. And then from the user experience perspective, the chat feature is very important. We know that, and we recently, as of Friday, released an update to our live experience, Yahoo screen.yahoo.com/live, that includes a chat feature. So we're very excited to see what value that adds.
So that's interesting. I'm just kind of like processing as we're going here that it's actually like, okay, we've got this experience and people are willing to sponsor it, but the more you can engage people and the more you can get them to watch for longer times, the more value there is for the sponsor, et cetera. So
yes.
You guys are anxious to actually create value around just the original content and to make it more compelling. It's a pretty interesting take on things. So let's transition a little bit to a third topic that had come up, and that's really workflow. And I know Ryan had mentioned you guys do 1,500 events a year. Chris, you had said you guys are doing a ton of events.
We're in the same realm, about 1,300 to 1,400.
Right, and Justin, who knows how many millions of people are doing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think you said you're doing something like 100 major events.
Yeah, probably, maybe even a couple hundred, yeah.
All right, and so, and this is something that Verizon actually has looked at as well. When it comes to creating and reproducing these kinds of events, it doesn't work manually, right? If you have to produce 1,500 events you got to hire a whole bunch of people because they may all be happening at the same time, and so you got to have this massive room full of people doing this manually. The other step is to say, can we somehow automate this? Can we take elements of from the production through the processing, the encoding, the transcoding, the transmuxing, and then the distribution? Can we somehow automate those elements? It's something that I know Verizon has made a major investment in and is really working forward with its uplink platform. So the question to you guys is, what are you doing? I guess let's start with Ryan. What are you doing to put on 1,500 events and have maybe 19 or 20 of them simultaneously without having to hire a ton of people? What are you guys doing?
Well, I mean, pretty much everything is automated, honestly. So we only really have to get involved when something goes wrong. So everything from so a lot of our events run on our 24/7 live linear networks, which we're digitally simulcasting all the time. So we have monitoring, both tooling as well as humans who do sort of occasional look-in monitoring. And then, of course, when events are going on, if anything is going wrong, our fans tell us immediately, loudly, angrily.
On Twitter.
So we have monitoring in place. So it's more the way that we're set up, and we're only 2 years old, so we had the luxury of sort of starting with greenfield. Is that everything is set up to be automated by definition. So there's no real process of sort of provisioning and acquisition, so to speak. If someone on one of our campuses wants to start streaming, they basically can turn on an encoder, point it to an entry point, and they're good. And then our system, as far as everything else around the metadata, describing that event, what is it, when does it start, who's participating, if it's a sport, what sport is it, who are the teams, all that kind of stuff is typically known in advance. And so we have a process by which people enter that, but it's weeks or months in advance, and then that ties into the event.
And Justin, I know you guys have sort of insourced your process. You guys, I think, have created a lot of these elements of workflow. How does it look like?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar to what he's describing. You would send a single RTMP feed to Twitch, and then we'd handle all the transcoding. As far as metadata is concerned, when it comes to gaming, a lot of people love to switch their video games up, so we've provided like a website where you can just quickly change what game you're playing at that moment. If you want to start and restart your broadcast, email your followers or subscribers. It's kind of similar to YouTube's kind of thing there. And we've just brought everything in-house basically. If you want to go back to scaling a little bit, like we are our own CDN in a sorts, and we very rarely use our third-party stuff, but it does exist though for certain regions. And we kind of discovered this back when we were Justin TV. Justin TV became Twitch 3 years ago, and that's when I started. And back then, in order to scale to video for what video gamers wanted, you had to be able to support those high resolutions. All games now are done in 1080p at 60 frames, and we need to find a way to broadcast out there to mimic that kind of that feeling that you get from watching from behind someone's back, essentially. So we had to learn early on 3 years ago. It's okay, all these gamers want to broadcast 720 or higher. How do we make that work, and how do we make that scale sufficiently? And that's where making it all in-house comes into play. We hired all these people from across the industry to make this product work and to design it well enough so that gamers could recognize how this works very easily, and even build our own platform into the new game consoles right now. That's why you can just pick up an iPad, download a Asphalt or whatever, and just broadcast right now if you want it.
Right on. So let's segue a little bit here, and I want to bring John back in this conversation. Mobile is a big word, bigger than the number of letters in it, and I know it's changing things. Whether it's one of the 150 different phones out there or tablet devices, I know that at Verizon and Uplink we're working on, okay, you encode once and it's available on 120 different devices. It's a simplified workflow. What are you seeing in mobile from a usage point of view? And how does that tie into your user experience? Millennials, I'm sure, are savvy with those other kinds of devices, but I think you're doing some of the most engaging stuff with regards to mobile, and we'd like some insight into what that is.
Mobile is clearly the big driver in terms of adoption and usage and extension. And one of the things that attracted me more to this space was the assessment of connected devices in general, where I think it was Intel looked at that market and said there are 3 billion connected devices in 2012, and as a society, we're going to grow to 50 billion by 2020. Most of that growth happening from 2015 on, really in the mobile sector. And if you look at metrics in this market, I think Uyala does a quarterly report on this. Mobile smartphones stream live content twice as long as VOD. The user sessions are pretty significant. I've seen numbers that say tablets are 11 times the viewing duration over VOD, and gaming consoles closer to 17 or 18 times. So if I go back to a brand being around that experience, that becomes incredibly important to them, especially if they want to target advertise to those consumers as well. And a music festival can have 80,000 people at it for 3 days. You're looking at an audience of 240 or 300,000 folks. And the properties that we work on, they may have a headliner like Elton John or Tom Petty and Paul McCartney, but the electronic shows will have massive stages, like 8 stages, and those shows start at 6 at night and go to 6 in the morning. The extension to consumers on those mobile platforms is, again, very significant, especially to the brand that's going to be presenting that experience across those platforms. So that's the high adoption for this market, and the ability to render and quickly deliver to those different handsets is the key driver, and the key success in establishing reach and engagement. And then also ultimately reporting back and letting them know what happened on those handsets, what was the consumption, what was the viewing time. Did a particular artist's set have a longer viewing duration? What was happening in the social channel as well, and that's going to be delivered back to the brand, especially for the mobile experience.
And Chris, what are you seeing with regards to mobile usage? Is Live Nation increased? Like what you're doing there, has it increased mobile usage of Yahoo, or what does that look like?
So prior to our Live Nation series, generally speaking, our mobile audience was about 10%. It was 90 on desktop, roughly 10% on mobile. Now, depending on the audience, depending on the band, like a One Direction show is much different than a Kiss concert, right? So the younger that demographic, the higher that mobile usage is. Sometimes it's up to 40%, but generally speaking for us, our mobile usage is around 20%, no matter what event we're streaming live. But with that said, like a big buzzword inside Yahoo is mobile crossover, and we've already achieved that just with web pages, and the big goal is to get that on video as well.
What's the mobile crossover? Define that for us.
More mobile viewers than desktop viewers.
Oh, okay, good definition. Ryan, you guys are doing some big stuff with mobile, and I think you had said that when it comes to reliance of content, there's starting to be a movement away from sitting on the sofa and watching the big TV to something else.
Yeah, I mean, especially this fall, we've been seeing huge viewing times and a disproportionate amount of live viewing on tablet. A lot more than we saw in our first couple of years. So we still get more video starts on phones than on tablets, but as far as people actually tuning in to a sporting event and watching it for 30, 40 minutes, tablets have become the device of choice. We do see, for us what we see is like during the week, desktop can still be the most popular because people are at their desks, they've got a game going on in the background, that type of thing. But once you get to the weekend, it's definitely, mobile and tablet represent over 50%, and tablet has really become significant as far as driving that long viewing consumption, which we're in the same boat as these guys. We've got sponsorship and advertisers, and they love that stuff.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it up here a little bit to you guys for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we're gonna take some questions here from the audience. So we've talked about some scale, we've talked about user engagement, we've talked about our user experience, we've talked about simplifying workflow, and we've talked about mobile. What else do people need to be thinking about if they're going to be doing an event that just can't fail? So in other words, something that's sponsored, where there's money on the line, what are we not thinking of? Justin?
Yeah, so when it comes to the events I've traveled to and have witnessed myself, the biggest point of failure that would be the most awful is when you're unable to ingest. Send that video, audio feed to your CDN. And where we best try to mitigate that is with multiple ISPs, multiple encoders all on site, and be able to find ways of mitigating that. whether it's through satellite distribution, so you have multiple areas in the world to send down to, or even just making sure that CDN has those multiple, has additional ingest points in other parts of the planet. I've been to events over in Korea and had a broadcast somewhere, and like then we just send to the server we have in Korea, and then you're fine, right? But if your CDN doesn't have that, then you're kind of unable to do that. You're unable to find a place that has the least amount of routes required, the least amount of routes that. Well, sorry, I'm kind of rambling. My bad. But so when you think about it, sending RTMP over the internet goes through many routes over the ISP, and the further away it is from the more routes that are required for that to take. So you always want to find somewhere close in order for the least amount of failure points, which to me are the routes.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, why don't you weigh in on this? So Justin's proposal is that signal acquisition, that element of it, is something that you need to think about if you're going to put a reliable experience out there that sometimes people don't. What's your take on this?
I think kind of the next level are things that my stakeholders need to be thinking about include things like virtual reality and the ability to participate in that live experience through a VR interface. And that's true of both the viewer as well as the brand, right? So I can create a really compelling branded VR experience about a concert or a festival or an engagement. That's very compelling. It allows me to further monetize the experience. And secondarily, the notion and concept of cause marketing, where that benefits, again, all the stakeholders. So especially the millennial, they're more discerning about what does this brand do to help the world or deliver a better experience. And the brand itself, Procter & Gamble has a massive cause marketing initiative, and also the performer. So if it's Coldplay or Arcade Fire or U2, they can also, the viewer then has the ability to make a micro donation through that mobile experience, if you will. So those kind of two aspects of the live experience that we facilitate from a digital perspective, I think those are going to become more significant and more important to that overall experience, especially when there's a brand kind of coming in and funding and supporting that overall content initiative.
Chris, weigh in on this, please.
Back up everything you can back up. That's at a certain point, whatever your budget can handle, back it up. Obviously, if you need multiple satellite trucks, that costs a lot more money, but back up your encoder, back up your cameras, back up your CDN. If you can run CDNs in a bucketized fashion where 50% is on one CDN and 50% is on another CDN, just take those kind of precautions.
Have you experienced a time or two where you hadn't done that and you paid the price?
Anybody who's streamed video for very long has made that mistake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you like to share one of those experiences?
No.
No. Okay. Nice. Ryan?
They're unpleasant.
So I think when you first asked your question, what I thought about was sort of real-time visibility into quality for the end user. I think for us, we actually haven't had that many issues with signal acquisition, but really having a clear picture of how our viewers are viewing their video in real time, monitoring, being able to react, both in real time, and then also getting a really clear picture of those experiences so that we can make changes to our systems and work with our partners, I think is a big opportunity. If anyone has a great solution that's financially palatable, let's talk. So I think for us, that's something that we're really focused on.
Can you give me an example of something you're talking about? So a tool to say, oh, are they getting the jitter on their video? Is that kind of thing? Or,
sure.
Or I'm not enjoying this experience because the colors are off, or
no, not the colors are off. No, it's buffering, or it doesn't look right, or it's not connecting, or all those kinds of problems. We hear a lot from fans about those issues, and they're always anecdotal. And we have some visibility, but it's not as good as it should be, and as I wish it was. And I think that would really help us, get to the bottom of and ensure a high quality of service in terms of that part of the experience.
We partner with Conviva for those kind of analytics.
I know they're big in the space.
They are highly, highly valuable.
So I've asked a whole set of questions now. Let's open it up a little bit to people out there. Anyone think of something I forgot to ask? Don't be shy. Right here.
This is for John. I'm thinking particularly at music events. You know, we talk about streaming and talk about gathering that audience outside. What about the audience that's there? How do you talk to your clients about engaging that audience locally, even in terms of having enough bandwidth on site? You know, so all those mobile users can participate on their phones, and how that might drive traffic to the stream.
If I can just sort of restate the question. John's doing big events for lots of people, but there's 50,000 people at the event itself. And so what are they doing to enable that experience via bandwidth and associated technologies?
Well, the music promoters are getting a lot more savvy and investing more heavily in their mobile apps for the experience. You know, I think Lollapalooza a couple of years ago, they knew there was a giant flash rainstorm coming. They could clear Grant Park where the festival was. A lot of it was by notification and push to the consumer, but it's still bandwidth is a challenge at the festival or an experience like that. And that's, we see a lot of mobile carriers now want to sponsor and be a part of it and create more throughput in that world as well. I think EDC did a deal with Snapchat as well, where you could Snapchat while you were there, and they built in extra bandwidth. But it becomes it's a challenge, right? There's 100,000 people all trying to upload pictures and tweet and comment, and even sometimes watch video from another stage. The other stage could be several hundred yards away, and it could be the challenge if you're an attendee at a festival is these lineups are incredible, right? 10 years ago you didn't get this, but you have the top artists in the world performing literally on 1 of 4 different stages simultaneously. So I've seen more of an interest of, hey, I want to watch Vampire Weekend, but I'm standing in front of the stage for the Chili Peppers. So that's a challenge being there that I think they're getting better at. But for video, that's still a little bit of a roadblock.
Ryan, have you had similar experiences with bandwidth at these events at the different stadiums?
Oh yeah, it's a huge problem. I mean, in the stadium, we don't see a ton of need for people to really watch live video in the stadium. There's a lot of interest in things like real-time highlights and stuff like that within the stadium to try to replicate the on-the-couch experience, which is a problem we're looking at tackling over time. But the general connectivity issue, where people just don't want to be anywhere anymore where they don't have good connectivity, and part of being, I think, similar to music, being at a sporting event is sharing your experience. It's definitely an issue that that we're looking at across our conference and all of our schools with venue connectivity, but it's not so much an issue as far as consumers wanting to consume live video in those environments.
Okay, good question, thank you. Anyone else? There's a question there.
For Ryan, what are you using to get the metrics and to identify which kind of devices people are watching?
So the question is to Ryan about the metrics
Yeah.
that you're tracking. What kind of tools are you using nowadays?
Yeah, so our OVP is Uyala, and they provide a lot of great metrics around both real-time and after the fact as far as device breakdown. And so we have their player deployed across all the platforms that we use. So that's our collection mechanism.
You mentioned the name was OVP?
The company is Uyala on a video platform. Yep.
Thank you. There was another question over here. There wasn't another question. Is there a question over here? There's one. Sorry, didn't see you.
In terms of scaling for this is just for anybody in terms of scaling on the CDN side, you see the traditional HTTP delivery from big line optimize L3, et cetera, to be kind of the answer going forward, or have you considered the multicast CDN or had experience with that?
So the general question of the panel is, with regards to scaling, maybe I'll throw Edgecast in as one of the CDNs. So HTTP streaming, do you rely on the CDN to be able to handle the scale, or do you multiplex across multiple CDNs and load balance? Is that effectively you're asking?
Not quite. The traditional HTTP streaming, as opposed to
Oh, okay.
companies for live delivery.
So HTTP streaming versus a multicast kind of solution. Is the CDN approach seem to be
We're
working?
traditional
or-
CDN at this point.
Same here. We don't like it when an end user has to download a plugin, generally speaking. So we're straight HTTP on HLS at Yahoo.
Yep, same on Twitch, I guess, too, HLS.
Yeah.
For us, it's really determined by the platform or the brand. We plug into whatever they're using, but it's representative of what the panel has seen from their perspective.
Okay, thank you for that question. Question over there.
Are brands or artists making any demands with regards to digital rights management and protecting their content before they allow it to be streamed on your platforms?
For us, not.
This is a good question. Thank you. The question comes to digital rights management. Are the brands saying, hey, you need rights before you stream on your solution, or how are you protecting our content? Are those questions starting to come up?
Currently, they're not forcing us to use DRM, but we do. There are certain precautions in the contract. Like when you watch a live concert on Yahoo, a concert normally lasts about 90 minutes, right? But we have the ability in our contract to replay it for another 24 hours. So it's replayed live, can't be VOD. They're very sensitive about that phrase. But mock live and live, we can replay it. You essentially get a 26-hour live event, which is great for us. It drives up stream numbers. If you missed it at night, you can watch it in the morning when you wake up, or somebody across the pond can watch it as a live experience as well. But yeah, that's no DRM yet.
John, I know you were in the watermarking space for a while. What's your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
that's not, if you look at what's happening to artists today, they're not selling a CD for $18.99 anymore. They're making their money on their performances. So if they're on stage at a music festival, they want a big audience because they're in a touring cycle. There are other dates that happen after that experience. And we've looked at ways too to help monetize their actual physical experience. When an artist walks to the stage, they actually have their entire set list. And at a music festival, they're always on time. They're very respectful of their fellow performers. So we can build quickly, we can take a photo literally of that set list, upload it into a companion playlist, and it shows in real time what the song is and where you could go click to buy it. And the follow on to that is we also want to build the opportunity to buy merchandise. If I want to buy a Bob Dylan t-shirt, I'm not going to think about that on a Tuesday afternoon. But if I'm at his show or watching his live stream, I'm far more compelled. And I learned this when I first got into live streaming 15 years ago with WWE. They're masters at marketing. If you watched any video on their platform, whether it was live or VOD, when it finished, you were in their Shop Zone platform to buy something. So you'd see Stone Cold Steve Austin hit a guy over the head with a barrel. Match ends, there were 5 autographed barrels in the store to buy, and the price is gone. It's auction or it's a impetus, your impulse purchase. So we don't have a security issue for a live performance, as Chris points out. But we're also vigilant on helping find ways that benefits the artist as a performer, either through merchandise, their catalog, or promoting where they are. When you have somebody watching you have a great user experience, there's a lot you can do on behalf of that artist, and even talk about what their philanthropy is or where they're going to be next. So there's a massive, and I think most of them now are very digitally savvy. They've invested very heavily in their social followings, right? They want to communicate with those people across all platforms in real time. So it's kind of where that is today.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a great question that came up while they were listening to the last one? Here's one. See? This works.
How are you dealing with latency issues amongst the trends that we see coming out, such as sports?
Latency between like action on the field and when it gets to users. It's about 50 seconds, 45 to 50 seconds, a little bit longer.
Yeah, I know it's bad. What's
Oh.
the trends? Or do you see anything that
Oh,
So the question is, do you see the latency issue changing? Is there a trend to growing longer or shorter, and how's that impacting your business?
it hasn't been, it's not that painful, honestly. I guess I don't see any trends toward it getting shorter, or that being, for us at least, a major pain point from a business perspective.
Ours is around 25 seconds, and it's just the nature of the technology with HLS. We got more complaints when we switched from RTMP over to HLS initially, but those quickly died out. Everybody's just kind of used to it now. And unless you're in the audience, you don't really even know it. Yeah.
Yeah, about the same on Twitch too. We were on RTMP up until like 2 years ago. When we switched to HLS, it was the biggest outcry, just due to people being used to type in something immediately in chat and have the person react to it. So we pushed a lot of our team to try to bring that down as much as possible. And I'm happy where it is. We're about 17 seconds. In some cases, 7.
Great. Anyone else? All right, I have one more question that kind of slipped my mind before, but the question in general of security. When you're bringing 800,000 people, as Twitch had mentioned, there's going to be someone who's going to try and interfere with that experience. And I guess the question really is out to the panel. Has security been an issue for people? I know the Olympics had, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people trying to hack in and interfere with the experience just because people want to interfere with the experience. What have you guys seen?
Speaking for Yahoo, I mean, we haven't had people try to hack in and interfere with the experience, but as a security measure, company-wide, we've gone to SSL, HTTPS delivery, just across the board, whether it's images, web pages, or live streaming or VOD streaming.
Yeah.
We haven't had that problem.
About the same on Twitch, but people too take precautions, which is resetting their stream keys constantly, about every day, cycling passwords when it comes to Twitch as well. Two authentication as well coming through for some of our bigger partners. Two-factor auth, sorry.
John, anything?
Same situation as Chris. It's kind of protected at the origin, but we haven't seen people saying, "Gee, I want to take down the Coachella live stream." That hasn't really been an issue. So, but the platforms that deliver the bits are all tier 1 providers who have security built into those platforms. That's more than sufficient to date.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up after this question. Go ahead.
I just have another kind of fun question. So for those of us who work with clients who maybe don't have a budget like Riot Games to send 35 cameras and fiber from Seoul, Korea to Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
Where do you put, where do you advise to put our eggs in our baskets as far as contingency plans and as far as, trying to do multiple things or trying to double up on stuff?
So
Is
I
there a
guess
certain area that is important?
I guess the question is, if you're of limited means, your budget is not giant, and you want to build in some amount of redundancy, what's the first place you should be spending your money?
Yeah.
Is that a fair question? Who's that question directed to? Just in general?
No.
Anybody got a suggestion?
Cool.
I would say at the encoder level. I mean, there's a lot of IP-based devices out there. If you're strapped for budget, that's your delivery mechanism is an encoder that can deliver via IP, either UDP or RTP, something of that nature, versus having fiber on site like you mentioned, or a satellite truck, which is even more expensive.
I would say just look at. I mean, the market is changing so quickly, and the landscape, the cost structure for a lot of the cloud-based encoding options, et cetera, is more attractive every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot you can do, at least in our experience with that stuff, to really kind of scale it up and make it look really big, make it feel really big, even without necessarily having deep pockets.
When it comes to like events where you don't have that much budget, a lot of partners on Twitch who are in that situation just rely on encoders that are essentially free using X264. So a lot of people are using XSplit to push right now to all of our ingest points, and sometimes people bring 4G LTE modems in their back pocket just in case you lose complete internet, which has saved some events in my history as well.
Any sense, John?
I would find a brand partner, right? Not everybody has $4 million to hire Jay-Z and the biggest brand, but there are brands out there that want to do smaller experiences. And again, the value of live streaming is that reach and that engagement and those metrics. So you don't have to have a $400,000 production budget. If you've got compelling live content, brands that I've interacted with have told me, I'm interested in being around that. Right? You're helping me solve a major problem that I have. And this problem is expanding exponentially on a daily basis. You can connect consumers to that live content. It can be can be anything, and I think there's an interest in it.
All right, so I'd like to thank Chris, Ryan.
We got one more
and,
guy, one more over here.
Ask one more question, and then I'll thank the other two guys. So go ahead.
Talking about small time, kind of a smaller guy, how do we, what's a good way to monetize that to our consumers? We offer a lot of just for free categories, we don't know really how to.
So that's an interesting question. So yeah, there's big events with big sponsors. What if you're a small event and you want to get some sponsors? How do you get the monetization going without having 50,000 viewers initially? Any ideas from the panel?
Well, I think so. In our case, our content, a lot of sponsors want to be associated with our content from an affinity perspective. I don't know what your content is. That's something people want to be affiliated with. So, I mean, that has served us really well, especially since we just launched and have started small in a lot of cases. It's that affinity. I think we have found that we can get a much better return and revenue on sponsorship as opposed to just straight ads, CPM based monetization.
Your education too, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to thank Justin, we're going to thank John, and if there's no other questions, we're going to say drinks are around the house. Thanks, folks.
Cool.